Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am Johnita Stanton. We have Reginald Perriman and Shaka Williams. We are TSARE. This is the There's Something About Real Estate podcast where we talk all things real estate. And tonight we have a special guest with us, Roberta Socia.
Hello, how are you today?
Good, thank you.
going
How are
on,
you?
Roberta?
Yeah.
Realtor, appraiser. Would you say realtor, appraiser by day and artist by night?
That sounds fair.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
The only appraiser that we talked to that wasn't scared to come on the show,
The only appraiser that told us the truth
too. Yeah,
without being nervous or scared to tell it like it is.
that's why she came.
Right.
I'm kind of known for doing that, so
That's
Hey,
good.
that's why we got you here.
my bluntness and honesty most of the time works in my favor, but not always.
Yeah.
I understand.
Well, we're the people that like honesty.
Fair enough. Fair
All
enough.
right. So tell us a little bit about your background. When did you get into real estate?
I started in real estate in 1990 as the night and weekend secretary at a RE/MAX office my senior year of high school.
Okay.
Yes, I'm dating myself here. I was in administration, every role you could have in administration up until about 97. I got licensed.
Okay.
And I was a broker's assistant, and I was also went and got my limited appraiser's license. That's what they called it back then.
Right.
To start my appraisal apprenticeship. I was state licensed by 1999, and by 98, 99, I went on my own in real estate sales. 2002, I went on my own in appraising. I broke off from the company I had been with for 5 years,
Right.
with their blessings, and switched more to the real estate sales role. And by 2005, I was KW Lakeside's top producing individual agent while I was pregnant with my third son. Third child, I should say. He was a son. And then 2007, I took a hiatus for a while. I still had my hand in real estate. I bought and rehabbed and rented out properties personally. And 2017, I came back into the business, and here I am.
All right. Yeah.
Nice. Now you said something, appraisal apprenticeship. I think a lot of people may not know what it took back then, especially to get into being an appraiser.
Yeah, I had to basically be a state licensed appraiser's shadow for at least 2 years. You had to log in over 2,000 hours underneath an appraiser, have everything logged in, and then take additional classes and pass additional tests and so on and so forth. It's much more difficult than a realtor's license. Right now I'm working towards my certification because they changed the rules after the crash of '08. You used to only have 3 tiers of licensure, now you have 4. And because I got back into the business when I did 17, I wasn't really grandfathered any allowances there. So I'm having to redo everything all over again to become certified residential. But I'm about a little over 2/3 of the way there with my hours currently. So I'm hoping to be certified residential by the end of the year.
Okay.
Right. So let's see, realtor and appraiser and investor at a part. You still investing now?
Not currently.
Okay.
I'm just not in a position to do so. I
Right.
sold my last property in 2017.
Okay. So how does the realtor state side as well as the appraiser side, how does that work? And is there any benefits of being an appraiser and a realtor?
I wouldn't, if you're already an appraiser, I think it's great.
Right.
Because both fields totally contribute to each other.
Right.
I have a lot of knowledge that your average realtors won't have, and I also have a lot of knowledge that a lot of appraisers won't have.
Right.
So, and not to mention, I've been hands-on in about a dozen rehabs, so I know construction pretty much inside and out.
Okay.
I was an FHA appraiser for about 5 years, but again, I have to reapply now after
Yeah.
getting certified and going through this all over again. So I always say there's not much I don't know about residential real estate.
Okay.
I don't know jack about commercial. I stay away from commercial. It's not my thing. Residential, inside and out.
Okay.
So I know a lot of what goes on behind the scenes in both fields that
Right.
people in the other field wouldn't be aware of.
Right.
So
Explain that the FHA appraiser piece.
I used to, it's changed now how they manage it, but I was an FHA appraiser. I believe I was approved right around 2000 or 2001, and I held that all the way up until I left the business again in 2007. For FHA appraisals, we used to have what they called a VC sheet. It was basically a checklist that you had to take through the house. If there was any trip hazards, was there anything that was a health or safety concern about the property that the person or buyer was trying to get an FHA mortgage for?
Right.
So the house would have to pass these inspections. Peeling paint was always the big one. Trip hazards, whenever there's a gap of greater than half an inch between any two concrete slabs, that was considered a trip hazard. Peeling paint was like one of the number one. That and handrails. I mean, if there's one step, you need a handrail.
Right.
And a lot of people back then didn't have handrails as often. So nowadays they're more custom and standard. But yeah, handrails, peeling paint, concrete, trip hazards. Those were the predominant things I often cited as an FHA appraiser.
And like roof, the life expectancy of the roof,
Yes.
like 3 to 5 years.
Yes, you had
That's
to
it?
have a certain amount of years left in the roof, and
Right.
that one I rarely cited that one.
Okay.
But there were a couple times, but not
That had to be
often.
bad.
Right.
So that's pretty much the
They have to
same as now, though, right?
Pretty much, yeah. There's
right.
not a whole lot of differences. The way it's handled, though, is different now, and I haven't read up as much on that recently, so I wouldn't want to go and venture into that territory, because, as I said, I'm still just I'm a state licensed appraiser. I'm not certified yet, so I'm not even able to apply for FHA until I'm certified.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah. So
All right. All right. So tell us. So we've been having some debates about. Let's start here. There's a market value of the home, what consumers perceive the value to be, but then there's the appraised value. And the reason I asked you about being a realtor and an appraiser, because sometimes we'll have an offer on the house. Maybe there's 11 offers on a property, and it's 10, 20,000 above asking. The appraiser is seeing that value completely different because they're basing it on recent sales, right?
I wouldn't say they're seeing it differently.
Okay.
Their task that they're being assigned is different, has a different
Okay.
intention. They are there to verify to the bank that the property is worth what the money is being lent on it for.
Right.
Okay. So they are approaching it from a different angle.
Okay.
I always say a house can be worth more than what it appraises for.
Right.
The appraiser is really just trying to demonstrate the value with their report and with their sales comparison analysis.
Right.
So I had a lot of problems last spring when we were seeing a lot of properties jump up in value and or the bidding wars that were going on. I felt like the jerk sometimes because I killed deals, and it wasn't really up to me. It was a matter of, even though I knew that house under the circumstances, say it was listed at 200 and it ended up selling at 250 in the bidding war.
Right.
All the comps are 190 to 225. I can only do so much. And I can say, yes, we're an appreciating market. I can bring it in on the high end of the indicated range. But the bank wants to see a value, both unadjusted and adjusted, that brackets that final sale price, if that makes sense.
Right.
That's the best way to explain it. So, yeah, there was a number of times where I'm like, and I'm a realtor just as much as an appraiser, and I cringe because I'm like, I felt so bad because I'm like, I'm sorry, dude, I'm doing the best I can here, but my hands are tied. We have rules that we have to abide by, the UAD standards and such.
Okay.
So my hands are really tied, but I would do the best I could, because I did understand the circumstances. So even when I go to list a property, this is a question I get asked a lot, and maybe I'll just dive in if that's okay. If you'd like to go in a different direction, please say so. But a lot of people will be like, well, when you go to list a property, how do you approach the pricing? Do you approach it as an appraiser, or do you approach it as a realtor? I say both. They're not mutually exclusive. I first look at, yes, all the closed comparable sales and everything else that's been going on with the market as far as pending and closed sales up to that moment. However, that's my first part of the configuration. The second part is nobody really looks at closed sales until after they put in an offer on a house. Nobody deems which house they're going to go look at by looking at comps first.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. So I put myself into the buyer's shoes. The
Mm-hmm.
buyer is going to have a price range and certain criteria that they're looking for.
Right.
So what I do is I look at what's active on the market.
Mm-hmm.
As we don't really pay much attention to expireds anymore like we used to. That used to
Right.
be a big factor, but now it's irrelevant. So I look at everything that's active and pending on the market as well.
Right.
And well, what is the buyer going to see when they go out in the price range that we're listing our house at?
Right.
How do we compete and compare? I actually never print out a CMA. I never have for a listing appointment ever.
Wow.
I actually pull all of my comps ahead of time, go through the photos. I print out the sheets. I make my notes about each property that I think are relevant. And then when we're sitting down and getting ready to talk about price, I pull out my laptop and put the screen in an angle that the homeowners can see and that I can see.
Right.
And I walk them through the process. Is this house, do you think, inferior or superior to your
Absolutely.
property?
Right.
Show them the pictures. And then I've already had my notes highlighted on the sheet so I know what to bring to their attention because, you get nervous when you're at a listing presentation.
Yeah.
You forget things.
Right.
So I do my best to make sure I point out the key elements.
Right.
And 90% of the time, we end up totally agreeing on a sale price or asking price. I'm sorry.
Right.
So I help tell a story. It's
Okay.
more of a narrative is what I give to the people when
Right.
we're sitting down deciding on a sale price. Now, do I still get those people who say, okay, it looks like this house should be at 250, no ifs, ands, or buts, and then you get the seller who says, well, I want 300.
Yeah. Right.
There's nothing I can do about that. I can. My job is to give them the information, to inform them, walk them through the process, help guide them so that they can make the best decisions for themselves. Now, they're going to at times make decisions that I disagree with or I'm not on board with. However, as far as I'm concerned, I've done my duty as long as I've completely informed them of everything that's going on the market and what they make as far as their choice goes. That's their choice, and I'll do the best I can to support them in the process.
I got a question.
Yeah, I know.
So, do you ever say, I'm an appraiser, you know that, right? So I know this isn't going to appraise at that dollar amount. Or I doubt very seriously that it will, based on whatever guidelines that you know.
When I'm working with the seller, you mean? I kind of do, but I wouldn't put it like that. That's not how I would word it. What I would do is I would bring to their attention that from a mortgage company's point of view, these are the comparables that the bank will be seeing when they bring out the appraiser. So if you do happen to sell that house at $300,000, the one we're just discussing as an example, just be prepared that it's very unlikely that the appraisal will come in unless we have some sales that transpire between now and then that would support that sale price.
Right.
So I let them know you're kind of setting yourself up for failure here, and unless you think you're going to get a cash offer for $300,000, there's a good chance that even if you get that offer, the deal could get killed by the mortgage company's appraisal.
Yes, ma'am.
Right.
You have appraisal
And
guarantee.
then not
question.
only that too, just before you,
Plus, I know, you're right. I know when to ask for an appraisal guarantee and when not to.
yeah, because I was gonna bring that up. Unless you find that buyer that's willing to do that, but those are far and few that are coming out of pocket. And
Yes.
in the previous market, it was more likely.
Yeah,
But
agreed.
in all reality, the average buyer is only going to pay a certain amount above appraised value.
There's too much uncertainty, I think, in the market right now. Last
Right.
spring, it was a totally different market than it is right now.
Right.
But at this time, I know a lot of realtors hate to admit it. They just want to always look at the bright side of things. But I say, well, sometimes just looking at the bright side of things, you miss all the important facts that are right in front of your face.
Right.
And one of those is the fact that there's a lot of uncertainty amongst buyers, sellers, investors, realtors, brokers, appraisers, mortgage companies, lenders. Everything is so uncertain and up in the air right now.
Right.
And it's so nuanced, and there's so many factors that can dictate the way the market may or may not go. So you are absolutely correct, though. Yeah, today in today's current market, you're not going to see a $50,000 appraisal waiver on a property. It's very highly unlikely.
Right.
And I would notify my client of that if that was the route they were choosing to take. I would let them know it's very unlikely. You're kind of shooting. You have better odds of winning the Mega Millions, but we can give it a shot anyway. Somebody's got to win, right?
Yep.
Sometimes you just have to have patience with them until they get a taste of what's going on in the market. And I allow my sellers that if I've listed overpriced properties in the past, but I let them know everything ahead of time, and I say, okay, well, let's just revisit this every 7 days after we get our feedback and our activity.
Right.
We'll review it. And people are different. some people just need to go through the experience and feel it out for themselves, whereas others
Right.
will look at the data and the facts and just, okay, they make all their decisions based off of that.
Right.
And other people, it's completely based on emotion, fears, past experiences, etc.
Yeah.
So the best we can do is inform them.
All right.
I want to talk about being in a what you called an appreciating market.
Yes.
So if you're evaluating a property where the values haven't quite taken place yet, is that what you mean?
No, an appreciating market is when the home prices are going up quickly, as they were last spring. Early last year, say a property that would have sold in January for $200,000 was probably getting about $250,000 by May. That's an appreciating market where the home values are going up very quickly, where you're seeing more than your average appreciation. For example, most people would probably consider your average appreciation anywhere from 3 to 10% per year for in a standard regular market that's very balanced. However, when prices are appreciating much more quickly than that, or at a higher rate like we saw last spring, things were going up like 20%, 25% within months from the prior year. That's an appreciating market.
Okay.
So we weren't just in a depreciating market. We were, because we're pretty much in the same market now. So right now, I want to say, because I've seen a change. I don't know if y'all seen a change.
Yeah,
but I've
we
seen
all
a
know the
change
change,
here.
right.
I'm talking about probably within the last 30 to 45 days.
Yeah.
Right.
Versus maybe the last 4 or 5 months.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if you think that is. So I don't think that we were in a depreciating market when we had that change about 4 or 5 months ago.
Right.
You saw
No, we haven't
last
seen-
quarter of 2022
correct.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
haven't seen
wasn't
any depreciation.
depreciation, but it was just slow.
It was stable.
It was stable.
right?
Yes.
It was dead.
Which is
It
what
was slow compared to what we were used to.
Yeah, correct.
Which means stable
Yes.
in a
Yes.
normal
which
market.
is normal.
That's
which
what
is
I was gonna
normal.
say. Yes.
Which is what I'm saying now. Because now, even though we're seeing an uptick, is not necessarily an appreciating market.
No, we're in a
still.
stable
It's the
market
same
currently.
market.
Right.
I would say we've kind of flatlined. We're in a general stable market at this time. We haven't really seen any depreciating we haven't seen any real depreciation since the crash, I would say. Things were once the crash began to rebound, it rebounded very gradually over a number of years. And then everything kind of peaked when the interest rates hit very low, hit
Right.
below 4%. It became so much easier for people to buy homes then at that time, and the
Right.
prices were lower than they are currently. And it was much more feasible. However, with inflation shooting up and interest rates shooting up, that has had a huge impact on the market. I wouldn't say it's depreciating by any means. I would say
Right.
it's more than anything, it's stabilizing.
Right.
Where will it go from there? I don't have that crystal ball,
Right.
and there's too many factors at play there to make any type of predictions.
So
Stable is
So I
good.
feel like it's the
Stable's
same.
fine.
So I guess what I'm saying. So Janita was. So I know you're saying that you feel like it slowed down, and it definitely slowed down from
It's
the
about November.
first. Huh?
He's about in November.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely slowed down in comparison to the first 2 quarters.
Yeah.
Right, and maybe the first half of the third quarter, but I guess I'm saying it's still the same. We're in the same market now, even with the uptick that we were in.
November.
Yes.
What I would say
saying-
is look at the one of the ways to determine if we are in an appreciating market or depreciating market or stable market is to look at months of inventory. There is a tab that you can look at on RealComp, which, for those who don't know, is the MLS service that most of us use, where you can type in the criteria and get the statistics for the months of inventory. And unfortunately, though, the way it prints out is days, not months, which gets confusing. I pulled up, when I taught a class recently at the office, I did a demonstration on this, and I pulled up some areas, and I said, well, let's take a look at the months of inventory. And, of course, then it shows it in a number of days, which, again, makes it confusing. The standard is 30.
Right.
30 to even to 60, I would say, is a stable market.
Right.
When you're seeing less than 1 month of inventory, that's when you're typically in a seller's market or an appreciating market.
Right.
When the months of inventory hits 3 or 90 days, you are in more than likely a depreciating market or possibly stable. But it's not and we also don't go by quarters when it comes to real estate appraising. We look at it yearly because Michigan is a seasonal market. As odd as that sounds, we're not Florida.
Yep.
Nobody here in Michigan says, "Oh, honey, we just put away the Christmas tree before we celebrate New Year's. Let's go out and put on our galoshes and go look at open houses." Okay, doesn't
Right.
happen.
We talked about
Doesn't
that.
happen.
y'all.
But
So
we
that's
have a
real
few
thing.
buyers. Them the buyers I like that do it anyway.
Yeah, you
I
still
love
have activity. Yeah, you still
Right.
have activity during that time period. I always say that the dead zone in Michigan is the second week of November till the second week of February. In the end of January, everybody's getting their W-2s in the mail. They're getting their taxes done.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that's a precursor to the spring rush market is people getting tax returns and using those funds for down payments. Not to mention the weather gets a heck of a lot better in April than it is in December in Michigan. So we look at the year overall in averages, and whenever I do look at a quarter, I look at it, I compare it, I don't compare it to the prior quarter, I compare it to the quarter a year ago.
Yes, the quarter.
Because
the
we are
year
such a
of-
seasonal market. So
100%. But
So-
what she's saying is what I'm saying. So what I'm saying about the same market is we're not in the. So we were in the appreciating market up until about maybe like May or June, right?
2022. Right.
Yeah, last
What-
spring
what-
was extraordinary, though.
But whatever.
It was extraordinary.
We were in the
Right.
appreciating market,
Yes.
but then we went and we saw it slowly
Stabilizing.
stabilize into a stable market, which is where we were. We weren't in a depreciating market in November. We were still in a stable market,
Correct.
and we're still now, even though we're seeing an uptick, which is we're an uptick from November, not from last year's
That's where, yeah.
February. I mean March. and
You're always
April.
going to see an uptick
Correct.
at this
From
time of
November.
year.
Yeah, from November to
From
December.
November to March or November till April. Every year, if you go back historically, you're going to see that shift.
But so we're
But you're
still
saying-
When did we say? Because I'm confused. I don't know who said we were in a depreciating market, but what I said.
No, we're not.
we're not.
We're not.
We
It's
haven't
stable.
been
No,
in
I'm-
We haven't had a depreciating market since spring
yeah.
Right.
I haven't.
or since the
Yeah.
crash.
So that's what I'm.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. So that's what I was saying. I don't know who said that part, but what I said about this past November and December in particular was unusually slow.
But it wasn't.
But
The number
that's
said
what we're
it
trying
Yeah,
to decide.
yeah, it's stable.
wasn't.
It was stable compared to what it's normally like during that time period. Because
Right.
the prior winter we were,
We were
and
still.
it was extraordinary. We were in
Right.
an extraordinary market last 1 year ago at this time.
So so what we're trying to clarify, because our audience needs some clarity. That's why I keep mentioning the actual year, because we don't know when people are going to watch this. So last quarter 2022 compared to the last quarter 2021, 2021 was still appreciating,
Correct.
and 2022 was just stable.
Stabilizing.
Right.
I would call it. I would say it was
Stabilizing,
stabilizing.
right.
Yes, it was stabilizing because we saw such an extraordinary rush this
Right.
past year. With interest rates as low as they were, and I think that was a very large contributing factor.
Right.
So when you've been running a marathon and then
Yeah.
you just go for a walk around the block, it seems extraordinarily slow.
Right.
But most people are just walking around the block every day. They're not running marathons.
Right.
So when you're used to a rush and then all of a sudden it stabilizes, it may feel like it's depreciating or it may
Right.
feel like the market is dropping, but that's only in comparison to what we've just been through.
Right.
If you look at it historically, no, we're just stabilizing.
Most people
Same
are
thing with
walking
interest
anyway.
rates.
Right.
I mean, up until, I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, I've been in the business since 1990 in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
And up until the crash, the average interest rates were 7 to 8%.
Right.
I can remember in 1994 when they hit 9% for a brief period, and business kind of flatlined. People got kind of nervous. We saw a bit of a stall in activity, but then
Right.
it went back into the 8s and things.
So that's what I was saying
Stabilized
about
out.
this past 2022 November and December. It felt more like that time.
Yeah,
And it did.
Stable, normal market.
Yeah. So what happened was right in that quarter, the interest rates went to 7.
Yeah.
We had not seen 7
Yep.
in a decade.
Correct.
And so people stopped. Like they really stopped
Right.
for a minute. But buyers are what you call it? They get over stuff quickly. They still just
Right.
ultimately, they adjust quickly, I guess.
I would say buyers go by what they can afford. What is the
Yeah,
bank
they go
telling
by
them
what they can afford. But and I think that the mindset also fairly quickly adjusts. So you had a lot of people when it first happened, it was like, oh my God, what's happening? The interest rates are going sky high. the ceiling and the clouds and the sky is falling, and people just were kind of like, we're not doing anything. And then as the weather broke, the income checks come in. The rates have been in the between the 6 and the 7s for a few months now. People are a bit more used to it, and so now the activity has started again.
Yep.
But it was happening anyway.
Typical every year this time.
That's what she's
But
saying.
I think too, what happened too, those buyers that were searching at 4% rates, if they didn't buy a home and then rates went up to 6%,
couldn't afford it no
some of them people couldn't qualify
Exactly.
anymore.
Exactly.
But I do want to ask you something. You pointed out that appraisers look at year-over-year stats.
Yes.
So you would compare first quarter 2022 to first quarter 2023
In regards to if
to
it's in a
determine
stable,
appreciation. Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Great.
I mean, that makes sense, though. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't, I mean, you have to compare January to January. You can't compare January to July.
Exactly.
Right.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Right.
That's what I mean by we're in a seasonal market, and
Yeah.
we have to understand the nuances of what we should compare to.
And that's
Right.
my point that I was making about
Right.
the market. We're not in an appreciating market anymore.
Right.
We're not in the depreciating market.
It's stable.
It's stable.
Yes.
Right.
It's the same way we've been for the last 5-6 months.
Yeah, for every
or
appraisal
longer.
report I write for a mortgage company, since the crash, this is something that was added to the protocol post-crash, we have to fill out a form. It's called your market conditions report, which is basically analyzing trends, where I have to type in all the information, and it does just that. It looks at it year to year, quarter to quarter, and so on and so forth. And then I have 3 options at the end of every single line. I check either depreciating, stable, or appreciating. Or I should say, no, they don't. They call it declining, stable, or increasing on each section of that analysis. Most of what I'm checking now is almost always stable. Every once in a while, some parts I may have increasing. There are certain areas here in Metro Detroit that have always been very popular and high in demand. And a lot of people have been asking me, what are those prices going to drop? I'm like, no, but you might have 5 offers compared to 25.
Right.
That's going to be the big difference this spring. Some areas you're going to see the impact of, the interest rates hitting harder, and that's going to be that first-time home buyer bracket.
Right.
That's going to be a tough one this spring because there's not enough inventory, and people just, because the interest rate's going up, they can't qualify for more.
Right. I want to say something too. One thing I hate about how the news reports things in the media, they'll say home sales are down, but really they mean the number of sales. So they're talking units versus actual pricing. So do you get people that are confused about that as well?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. But like I said, whenever I sit down and talk to somebody, I create a narrative, and that narrative kind of lays it all out.
Okay.
And in regards to the market trends, I've never really had to bring out a report on that yet, but now that I'm thinking about it, that might be a good idea to do next time.
Yeah.
I have a question about square footage.
Go ahead.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, this is a hot
About to
topic
get
right now.
into it.
Uh-oh.
Okay. So I was just going to ask, from an appraisal standpoint, do you ever consider square footage pricing? Like, do you look at when you're considering like the actives versus the pendings and the actual solds in the area? Do you ever consider the square footage pricing?
No.
Okay.
I didn't think so.
So not price per
Yeah, I mean, I've heard it before. That is no. That is a no.
No. The only time when I'm working on a report that I take into consideration cost per square foot is when I'm trying to determine the dollar amount to use as an adjustment for variation of square footage of more than 100 square feet. So, for example, if I'm comparing a house that's 1,000 square feet to a house that's 1,200 square feet, how much am I going to do per dollar? So here's the standard, I hate to say it, but I'll say it's a standard formula.
Right.
It's typically 25 to 35% of what the average of the square footage per comparable is. So let's say, for example, the comparables, one is at $200 a square foot, one's at $210 a square foot, one's at $225 a square foot. I would probably say, okay, $210 divided by 3, it's $70. So then I would take that 200 square foot difference and multiply it by that number, which would be $70, and that would be my adjustment. We do not adjust it by a full dollar amount, even if they're going for an average of $210, $220. Banks don't want to see you to make an adjustment using the exact cost of something. They want the adjustments to be minimal and nominal. They want them to be just that, an adjustment.
Because you can easily, if you use the full $200 per square foot,
Boy,
you can easily have an extra $40,000 or $50,000 adjustment.
Yeah, you could have
for a
some big
couple
ugly.
hundred- Yeah,
That would be a big ugly
that
adjustment.
makes sense.
Yes. So
So, okay. This is what
Hey,
brings
wait,
us
hold
to
up. Everybody rewind this, get your notepad and your calculator
Right.
and do that.
They're gonna need it for this.
Yeah.
So this, I want you, how you just describe that situation. Can you describe a scenario where we have a 4-bedroom and
A 3-bed versus a 3-bedroom.
versus a 3-bedroom?
Right?
Let's do that first,
All right.
so we don't mix up the
no adjustment.
No adjustment. Okay. No. I mean, unless it's square footage difference, then
Correct.
you're gonna do that.
Correct. I will
Okay.
not make. The only time I ever make a bedroom adjustment is if it's less than 3 bedrooms.
Okay.
The subject or the comparables compared to others that are. So let's say I have a 3-bedroom house. That I'm appraising, more than likely I'm not even going to use a 2-bedroom comparable. But let's just say that one of my best comparables is one that was, say it was 3-bedroom converted to a 2. So it's the same every way, they just removed a wall.
Right.
In that case, I would make an adjustment for a 2-bedroom compared to 3, because 3-bedroom is really the standard. Anything above that is personal preference or, 4-bedroom versus 3-bedroom. 2 houses, the exact same square footage, there's not going to be a price difference.
Right.
And what about for a bathroom? Oh, I'm sorry.
Wait, hold
There's
on.
a market. There's a market appreciation for
because
it.
I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
Now, if you put on your realtor cap and you're speaking to a buyer or seller, and you're looking at a 3-bedroom versus a 4-bedroom, do you think there's a market value difference?
No.
From what the consumer would pay for it?
No.
Okay.
If
She
any
just
adjustments
explained
would be made, it would be based on the square footage.
I
Doing a
feel like the
bedroom count.
answer is still coming from an appraisal standpoint, because we see all the time when we get, people searching in the market,
Right.
the desire for an additional
4-bedroom.
bedroom.
The problem is you can't put a number on it. So you
Yeah.
have to go from an appraisal standpoint because that's the only one that actually matters, right?
If you were to do a market analysis with an extraction, trying to figure out if there was a price difference, you won't find a difference. But you do have some people who, you're right, want the 4 bedrooms. However, families today typically are smaller than they have been historically.
Right.
And most people don't have 5 kids or grandma and grandpa living with them. And if they do, they typically either add on or they finish off a basement space, install an egress window or something along those lines. And especially in regards to home offices, most of the 3-bedroom homes, if they're newer built homes, are going to have a den downstairs anyway, and that would be used for that home office purpose. So you really don't see, if you were to try to extract it, you wouldn't be able to. I would be shocked if you could find any dollar difference between a 3-bedroom and a 4-bedroom home in most markets.
All right, so I want to, because we got investors listening to the show too, so I want to break this down for some investors.
Go ahead.
So I have investors that are renovating properties, and maybe they have a 3-bedroom, and then there's an additional 3rd floor unfinished attic, and they're like, I'm going to make this into a bedroom, and they're probably going to spend $25,000 to $30,000 finishing that into a bedroom. Now, from some buyers would love that, right, because they have the extra finished space. But from an appraisal standpoint,
It would just
it's
increase
not,
the square footage. That's it.
So you're
Right.
not gonna get that full.
But if it is,
you're not guaranteed to get that full
Right.
amount back.
You're most likely not gonna get it.
All right.
That's why.
I just wanted to say that because I'm going to send this clip to everyone.
because look,
Well, one thing I'd like to point out is construction, at least last year, I think most people were saying your average dollar per square foot to construct a new home was give or take $150 a square foot.
Right.
If you have a neighborhood where the homes are selling for an average of $225 a square foot to $250 a square foot, in that case, it makes perfect sense to do so. You'll come out ahead. But
Right.
don't think of it from the bedroom point of view. Think of it from the square
Square
footage
footage.
point of view is
Okay.
what you want to really think about.
Right.
And another thing to think about is they made some big changes with measurement standards last spring. ANSI, ANSI is the standards that we have to go by.
Right.
Any part of a level that's below grade is now considered a basement. So now a quad level has basically 2 basements. A tri-level has 2 levels and a basement. Another big change they made is that, and this is really important when it comes to bungalows.
Right.
You cannot consider any area that has lower than a 5-foot ceiling height. So when you have that bungalow where it goes all the way to the floor,
Right.
and normally this is in a closet, right?
Right.
Most 9 times out of 10 we use those areas as closets. You have to stop at the point where it's 5 feet from the floor to the ceiling.
When you're measuring for square footage.
Yes. Yes. And they are very particular about this. I've also seen some people finish attics upstairs, and, some people have a walk-up unfinished attic in a bungalow. Ceiling height, I'm going to kick myself. I believe it's 7 feet. You have to have a minimum of 7 feet for ceiling height. So I've seen some houses now that have a finished upstairs, and it can't be counted because one in particular, somebody had me go look at when an agent in our office was listing property. He's like, they finished the attic after they bought it. I want you to go measure the square footage.
Right.
All right. I go over there and I get upstairs. I'm like, this ceiling is really low. Sure enough, I pull up my tape measure. There's no point where it's higher than 6.5 feet.
Wow.
That whole upstairs does not count in the GLA, gross living area, or your square footage.
Wow.
They can't even get a straight back like a shotgun.
I got a question, right? Because swimming pools, above ground, in ground, does it matter? How does FHA feel about them? What is the value add? Just your whole take on
above ground swimming pools are considered personal property, not real estate.
Okay.
So no adjustment is made for an above ground pool.
All right.
However, an in-ground pool is an improvement to the property. It's literally dug into the ground and typically done in either gunite, vinyl liner, or the fiberglass drop-in formed pools. You have to do a lot of digging. You have to have mechanicals separate, everything else. Right. So above ground pools, they do not make an adjustment either way. It's considered personal property. Consider it one of those put up pools that you put up in the spring and pay down the fall. Even if it's one of those big fancy ones, no value. However, you do get people who are buying just for the pool.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Those people will look at just the pools. So it's a matter of just a smaller market. Now, when it comes to in-ground pools, it can go any which way. And let me explain why.
All right.
If you have a house, let's say in Warren, where your standard lot size is 60 by 120, you've got your standard 1,200, 1,400 square foot brick ranch, and you have this little backyard, and it's all concrete and a pool. Okay. We've all seen this house, right? We've all seen this house.
Yeah.
In that case, is it a bonus or not? Well, first thing I would do is try to find 3 comparables that are the exact same way. I try not to make that adjustment if I don't have to, because it's an ugly one. You really can't say necessarily, because for one, there's a huge different cost in different types of pools. Is it a gunite pool from the 1960s? Well, if it is, you're going to have a new fiberglass one dropped in or have the gunite redone at some point in time, because the gunite, the way it was made back then, it had a life expectancy. It wasn't meant to last forever. So in that case, it could actually be a detriment. And if it takes up your entire backyard, it could be a detriment. Some people say, I got dogs, I want them to have grass to run around in, and I don't want them just running around on cement. And also there's the fear of kids and animals falling in, and there's also liabilities there when it comes to a pool. So when it comes to pools, you really have what I call pool buyer, somebody who will literally buy the house just for the pool and, fix the house up accordingly. Because like the fiberglass and the new gunite pools, I mean, you can easily spend $75,000 to $100,000 on up for those pools versus a typical inexpensive liner in-ground pool. You can do those for probably around $10,000 to $15,000. And if you fill them, the vinyl ones, if you fill them in with dirt, it's no big deal. But the gunite ones, you're not pulling that sucker out. Most people just fill it with dirt and go from there.
Right.
But then you always have that structure there under the ground. So if you're ever going to do anything with that land in that space, you're going to have to at some point knock it up, break it up and take it out.
Right.
Bring in the big machinery, right? So, and not only that, but another thing to consider is we're Michigan. We're not Florida.
Right.
That pool is only usable 3 months out of 12 months of the year. By all means, it's technically considered a functional obsolescence for a house in Michigan because, again, we are a seasonal market and we don't have 80-degree weather all year round. We're lucky if we get it for 2.5 months.
Right.
So the cost to maintain a pool and take care of it, close it up, reopen it, all the above could be considered obsolescences. meaning deterrent from value. So, but when you get into the higher end market with bigger, where homes have bigger lots, okay.
Right.
So you get into the home market where you have the $700, $800 million homes who are on a half acre or an acre lot.
Right.
Then it's a bonus. Because in that price bracket, it is more popular to have those types of amenities. If you have those big, large homes, people do a lot of entertaining, or they have a lot of kids or family. You know, having that 4-car garage and having the nice in-ground pool in the backyard with the nice lighting and the hot tub and, you know, the dangling lights all above it and everything else is considered a bonus. Typically, I try not to ever compare in-ground pool house to one that doesn't. And even if my best comparable is a house with a pool, my subject does not, I do everything I can to avoid using that comp.
Right.
Because, again, they are extremely expensive, especially the fiberglass and the gunite pools, and not to mention the cost of electricity to maintain all that.
Right.
It
Yep, I
takes
had
a
one.
lot.
So you're saying
So
if you
for
have that you would have to, if you had to use that to compare, you would have to.
And then I would
potentially-
I would make an adjustment. I would say, and it really depends on the price bracket that the house is in as to how big of an adjustment I'd make. And I'd also consider how much yard space do they have outside of the pool. You know, do you still have, if you have a half acre lot,
Right.
the pool's not taking up much valuable real estate. If you have a 60 by 120 lot in Warren, it's taking up a lot of real estate.
Right.
I have a question
Go ahead.
about a swimming. Is a swimming pond offer or take away any value, or is it the same as a pool?
By swimming pond, do you mean define a swimming pond?
Where people, so I've
You mean
seen,
like a natural
Like a
water
natural-
source in the back?
yep, like I know people who have a place out in Brighton,
Right.
and they have like, you know, like you said, it's a lot of land, probably acres of
Right,
land,
correct.
large house,
Yep.
$1 million house,
Got it.
and they added a swimming pond. So, you know, they dug it out.
Was that natural?
Does it have water filtration?
I believe it does.
Okay. It depends. It depends on how large it is. It depends on how large the property is. It depends on how nice the pond is. I have friends who live out in near Fairhaven, and yeah, they have 5 acres, and they have a huge pond, and it has multiple fountains, and they treat it, and they take care of it, and half of it has a sand beach. They
Yeah,
have sand brought
exactly.
in.
Yep.
Right.
So, I mean, it's not a funky pond.
Yeah,
Right.
There's a big
nice.
difference between a stagnant, funky pond and a well cared for one. In their case, because of everything they've done, I mean, they even have a deep end and a diving board. So in that case, it's going to be a contributing factor. It's
Gotcha.
on 5 acres and such. How much would I give for it? Oh, it depends on, again, how nice is the pond, how large is it, and so on.
So you're probably not gonna get what you spent on it back in value. or in
Depends on
in
what you
appraisal.
spend on it.
I mean,
Yeah.
for a nice one.
If you're a builder and you have your own backhoe, you
Right,
can do it
right,
pretty
right.
darn cheap. Let me tell you.
Yeah,
So,
Shaka, because I need a
But
swimming pond on my acres.
It wouldn't make
Look at
sense
your
for
house.
someone that had maybe like one of the smaller homes for 200,000 and they spent $70 grand to have a pool installed. They're never going to see that
correct.
value back,
No.
right?
No.
Just ignore my
No.
swimming pond.
No.
Well, it's swimming pond too. Right?
Well,
No, I
it
just teasing
depends.
because and I do. He's right. Like I have to get you out to my house because I have a unique farmhouse on a couple acres, and I need to see, what I should be doing for improvement. I'm considering just bulldoze. They'll be so mad at me.
Well,
if I
when-
bulldoze the whole house and just
No,
Oh.
don't do it. She's telling you no right now.
No,
Yeah.
what she's talking about is to change it to a different
kind of
living.
to, like-
yeah, she can.
Okay.
She
She
probably
got
could.
a haunted house out in Taylor, and she keep trying to tear stuff down. I'm telling her stop before they get you.
But she
I'm not
can
talking
turn
about
that
the neighbors,
into a different
Well,
space.
sometimes, though, those ponds are necessary in certain areas where maybe the groundwater has nowhere to go. Like some areas in northern Macomb have a lot of clay content. So in the spring, and it rains, and I know this because I had a farmhouse out there in northwest Macomb before, and I had a lot of clay soil around my house. And in the spring, when it would rain, there was standing water everywhere.
Right.
Everywhere. It was really bad. Admittedly, though, I loved to listen to the frogs in the spring. It was the most beautiful sound ever. But the mosquitoes it brought and the bugs and the standing water, it was a nightmare. So in a case like that, if you have somebody come in with a bulldozer or with a backhoe, and they grade the land so that all this standing water goes into a pond,
Right.
that would benefit the property. I'm not going to make an adjustment for it, but in that case, it's kind of actually needed.
Okay.
It's almost as if they didn't have that done, it would have a negative impact.
So it's
Do you
almost
see what
like
I'm
an
saying?
improvement.
A necessary improvement.
improvement.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
So.
All right.
Did we get all of our appraisal? We talked about square footage.
But we'll never
No,
get all
we
of
got a
them.
lot.
We
We
got to
got-
come back. We'll
We
do
so-
another show one day.
Yeah, but there's a few other things. So we talked about adjustments. So the adjustments for square footage, pools, and everything. But all adjustments are not equal because you're basing it on the area, I think you mentioned as well, right?
Correct. It's nuanced.
Right.
There's multiple factors that are going to contribute to it.
Right.
Like the dollar per square foot in some areas is going to be much higher than others.
Right.
Same thing for like a bathroom count.
Right.
If I'm dealing with say a $50,000 to a $75,000 house, and one has just one bathroom, the next house has two bathrooms, one on the main floor. I'm not going into the basement count yet.
Right.
In a $50,000 to $75,000 market, I'm probably only going to make an adjustment of about $3,000 for that additional bathroom.
Okay.
However, you get to Royal Oak, you have one bungalow that has the typical first floor bathroom. Right. You have another bungalow that they've added a second floor bathroom.
Right.
That's going to be probably I'm going to make it a $5,000 to $10,000 adjustment at least, depending on how nice the bathroom is done and how well it's designed.
You hear that, everybody? I need everybody to listen to that because
And
they
if
keep.
you have a Royal Oak bungalow, put the bath upstairs first before you do it in the basement. The basement bathroom does contribute to value, however, not as much as a bathroom above grade. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So
Go ahead.
That adjustment. So you said 5 to 10 versus a 3,000.
But she said in Royal Oak though.
Well, I'm saying
I'm
is that
saying that
because of the
market.
property value? So you said because it wouldn't make if it's a $50,000 or $80,000 home, it wouldn't make sense to making a $10,000
exactly, you're getting what I'm saying, right?
Right,
It's
okay.
It's market. All the adjustment amounts are typically market derived.
Okay.
We take a look at what's going on in that specific market.
Right.
Some of the higher end homes, like especially once you get over the $500,000 market, there's been times where I've probably hit. I think one time I hit a bathroom for like $20,000 because they had an extra bathroom compared to the comps, but it was extraordinary. They probably spent $50,000 on this bathroom. So. Same thing goes for finished basements.
Right.
That's another big question I get a lot. And
Answer it.
they all hate it. It depends.
Yeah.
It depends. I've seen extraordinary basements.
Okay.
Before the crash, I'll never forget this one condo I appraised. It was an attached high-end condo in Clinton Township. And it had a large basement. It was like a 2,500 square foot condo. So at the time, it was like a $200,000 to $300,000 price range. They spent $75,000 finishing their basement.
Right.
They had a beautiful oak bar with brass rails. They had a sauna. They had a steam room. They had a bar that was just better than most people would ever put in their house upstairs, let alone in a basement. And it wasn't even a daylight basement. It was a standard, regular basement. And they went to go get a refinance, and I got chosen as the appraiser for the refi appraisal. And they were literally expecting to get dollar for dollar out of that.
Right.
And not only that, they had only lived there a couple of years, and at that time, we were in a stable market. We weren't seeing extraordinary appreciation. So I ended up appraising it. If I'm going guesstimate here, but I want to say it was probably only like $20,000 or $20,000 to $50,000 more than what they paid for it, and they were pissed.
Right.
I got a call from the lender on that, and I'm like, listen, especially it's a condo. We have to use apples to apples, oranges to oranges.
Right.
And this is the absolute highest price that's sold in that neighborhood is this. And I even went above that in my appraisal because I said the subject is superior to the highest comparable sale.
Right.
But nowadays that wouldn't fly, just, But it did fly back then because I demonstrated my reasoning for it. They did have this extraordinary basement. It did contribute to overall marketability appeal, and it did increase the value of that condo, but not $75,000.
Right.
But you said nowadays it wouldn't apply, meaning that
Extraordinary.
I actually just did a report with this. I appraised a property in a subdivision, standard pretty much sub that was built in the early 70s, where you have the ranch, colonials, tri-levels, and quad levels, standard size lots, right? And the comparable I had, or the property I had to appraise, was superior to all the comps in the neighborhood that have sold.
Right.
And I did bring it in higher than any of the comps had sold for. And I thought I did a really good job explaining it. I did lots of photos, explained everything out in the report. Sure enough, they came back with revision requests. And they're like, we need a higher comp. You have to show us something that's sold for above what you're praising this house for, period. I mean, it wasn't an ask, it was a you must.
Right.
So I ended up having to use a colonial, even though it was larger, but it had sold for a lot more, and I ended up making it work. But otherwise, that appraisal report may have been very well denied by the lender just because I couldn't find anything or another property in that neighborhood that had sold for higher than, I was appraising the house for higher than the highest sale.
Right.
So they do not like to see that. They want it. They want the price bracketed. Period.
Median.
So
Some,
you have to have something that sold for higher
Right.
than what you're appraising the property for.
So that's it. I want to ask one last question, and then y'all can have her. Dang, I forgot it. Oh no. So we're talking about the. So you just said you had to use the house that you that was a condo. That you're talking
No,
about.
the last one was
The
a
last one I
tri-level.
was just talking about was a ranch.
A ranch, but
it
you
was
had
a
to
ranch,
use
and I ended
a-
up having to
use
use
a
a colonial
colonial.
because none of the ranches in that neighborhood had sold for as much as what this one sold for because it was superior in condition.
Gotcha.
And yeah, it's a 70s house, so some
Right.
of them, the other comparables. This property had been completely remodeled and updated throughout and had a finished basement and everything else. The other properties that had sold in that neighborhood were all probably still. Best case scenario, you'd say they were updated, but not really remodeled. So they were in inferior condition. So I knew the subject property was, and plus it was a sale. So, and it sold really quick within days of going on the market. So I had no doubt that home was worth what it sold for. But trying to demonstrate it to a bank, they want to see the price bracketed. They want to see something that sold for more than it and something that sold for less than that and something right around that. However, all my comps were really inferior. And so they said, well, in order for this to fly, we need something in that neighborhood that sold for more than, the comparables I'd already chosen. So I ended up using a colonial that was similar in functional utility, same number of bedrooms, bathrooms. It was a little bit larger, but not too much so for to cause any red flags. And they bought it and it flew. So
that brings me to my question. How often do you run into a situation where you use a different style of house, i.e. a ranch and a colonial, as comps?
Not very often. I do.
It's got to be a very, very special circumstance.
Yes, exactly. Say, there are those neighborhoods where buys, tries, and quads are extremely rare. In those cases, I would go with another style home, or especially if you get out to the country, more rural areas where the density is, very low.
Right.
In those cases, I remember when I sold my farmhouse, I got to see the appraisal, and the appraiser, my farmhouse was 150 years old. It was built in 1870. And the appraiser, and this was an FHA appraisal too, they were FHA buyers, he actually compared the house to brand new construction in the area. For one, my farmhouse was all redone. And most of the farmhouses in the area weren't at that time. Again, this was 6 years ago, when the real estate market hadn't really recovered yet. There was still very limited activity. I've had to do it. It depends on the market and where you're at. But if I have a bungalow in Royal Oak, there's no way I'm going to use anything other than another
'cause there's
bungalow.
a ton of 'em.
Exactly, you got it. Exactly.
But you got the
Exactly.
same. You had the same thing happen. So that just happened with me in November.
Okay.
Same thing. I have a 200-year-old house, but I had new construction.
Compared,
A couple
they
of 'em.
use new construction comparables. Yeah, there's a time and a place to do that.
So in a situation, let's say you're in a city, so you're not in the country, and then you're in a city where, i.e., let's say somewhere in Southfield, and there's a lot of ranches,
Right.
right? No, there's not a lot of ranches, or whatever. It's not a lot of what we're looking for, right?
Okay.
Do you go out further?
Typically, what I would probably do, let's use like a quad level for an example, because there's not a whole lot of those. You can sometimes, if I have a unique style home that is, I would say, one of the lesser desirable styles. Okay, we're in Michigan. Everybody wants a ranch or a bungalow or colonial first. The buys, tries, and quads come last.
Right.
If I'm appraising a quad, I'm going to try to use any buys, tries, or quads. I try not to use a ranch or colonial, and if I have to, I'll typically choose one that's on a slab. And sometimes, yes, I will go over a mile. I may choose another quad in what we would refer to as a nearby competing neighborhood that is in the same market as my subject's neighborhood, because you can do that. You can just Warren is another good example. Just like Southfield, you have those neighborhoods where you have one identical neighborhood right here at 12 and Shaner, and then you got the exact. I mean, literally, it looks like the exact same picture, same neighborhood over at 13 and Ryan.
Right.
I'm just throwing
But
street
it's
names
more
out there.
than a mile, but it's the same
It's
kind
the
of
same,
market.
yes. We
Okay.
call it a nearby competing neighborhood.
Okay.
Where basically the buyer would be looking at both of the neighborhoods. If a buyer was to be looking for a quad, they would look, and both of those neighborhoods would be on their agenda to see or purchase.
What about crossing a freeway?
That is more of an underwriter pet peeve than anything. Sometimes it's relevant and sometimes it's not.
Right.
You go into Warren right around 11 and Van Dyke.
Yeah,
Is there a big
you have
change
to cross. No.
between
not
over
really.
696? No, there's not. As
Yep.
long as you stay in the same school district, you can have the exact same Bridge Ranch on one side, sell for the exact same price on the other side.
Right.
So there are times when it's relevant because one side of the expressway may be a completely different neighborhood or market.
Right.
Versus other times it's not. But I will say that is an underwriting red flag I've discovered since coming back into the business. That used to not be an issue. I would just say nearby competing neighborhood, but now the underwriters look at the map, and if they see a big highway, they raise an eyebrow, and sometimes will ask for an additional comp or explanation. But
There used to be a thing back in the so when I'm looking at things, I still use like some of my old stuff that I got from appraisers, which was the expressways, railroads, body of waters, and parks. You want to stay on the same side of these
I disagree.
items.
Yeah, I disagree on that. I think it more has to do with proximity, and is the park might be really close to you, but is it a private park, or are only residents of one certain neighborhood allowed to use it? You may have water nearby, but maybe you have absolutely no views of it nor access to it, and you're for 6 miles. So it varies. Railroad tracks, in some areas and some markets, are an impact. Other areas, they're not. Royal Oak and Birmingham, there's very few pockets where it impacts the value. If it's right in your backyard, yeah, it's going to impact your value. Are you a couple blocks away from it? No.
Yeah, you're more so talking about how those things impact the neighborhood. So like Wyandotte, you're pretty much saying if there's a railroad going through the neighborhood, it's not a big deal because you expect that in Wyandotte.
Well,
Right.
it depends on the market, yeah, and how
Yeah.
close you are. If you have a bunch of small animals and pets, do you want your backyard to back up to a railroad? No, you're going to be worried about your dog
But do you
getting on
ever
the tracks
remember
and
that?
getting
Like seeing that
Yeah, I
when
remember.
when they would, you can't use this comp because it's on the other side of.
Even when we used to do BPO, sometime they'll say, explain
Yeah.
why you use the comp on the other side of the freeway.
Yeah.
And like you said, I'm like, it's the exact same market.
Yeah.
The freeway doesn't matter.
Right.
That market was there before the freeway, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
So I do want to go back and touch on something real
ahead.
quick, because we also have a lot of investors that watch this, well, sellers too. There is a such thing as over improving your property.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
And you can spend money that you'll never get back.
Absolutely.
So some things you're just going to do for your personal use.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
So
I just feel like, I'm sorry, I just feel like some improvements people have to, it's kind of like that basement you were talking about.
Yep.
We buy things all the time, whether it's cars, jewelry, shoes, you know what I mean? Like we spend a lot of money, and then when we put it into our house, we expect to get it all back. And it's kind of like,
Not necessarily.
you're probably
Yeah.
just doing that for yourself.
right.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
I have a good example of a house for that. Remember when granite just started getting popular right after 2000,
everybody
right?
did granite.
Another house actually was in Clinton Township too. This one house I went into, they bought a ranch and they floored the entire house in black sparkly granite. The entire house.
Bedrooms
and-
and everything.
And she was, the homeowner was bragging about how much she spent on it. And I'm just like, oh my God, every person who comes through here is going to be like, how much is it going to cost me to bust
rid
this
of
up
it.
and
Bust
get
this
this out
up,
of here?
yeah.
And I don't remember how it went in the appraisal, but that was a good example.
Yeah.
And I want to say she said she spent like 50 grand or something, some insane number for that floor. And most people are going to look at that house and be like, give me a sledgehammer.
Please.
Yeah, or a jackhammer, and let's get this out of here, right? I would say some of the areas that you cannot go wrong with if you do them economically and appropriately is adding bathrooms. You need a toilet on every floor of the house that people spend time in.
Right.
So if you're unfinished basement, nobody uses it, and you have a first floor laundry, don't worry about a toilet in your basement. But if you have a finished basement, at least have a half bath down there, what we call a lav, with a sink and a toilet. You cannot go wrong by adding a toilet on, or at least a half bath on every single floor of the house. In the bungalows in Royal Oak, I would like to tell people, your best bet to spend your money, if you have your typical 3-bedroom bungalow, give or take 1,100 square feet, 1 bedroom upstairs, 2 and a bath on the main floor. Your best bet is first to put a bathroom in upstairs before you do it downstairs. You will get money back. The upstairs bath, you'll get back every dime, as long as you're realistic with your expenses. I mean, if you put in a $50,000 bathroom, you're probably not going to get much of that back.
Right.
But if you put in that second floor bath and you spend under 10 grand, you're going to get that money back. And then
When you getting a second floor bath for 10 grand, don't call me for that, because that's what I was about to ask you. So I was about to say that because I have a lot of people. I have somebody right now. People always want me to build. They're looking for bathrooms everywhere. Right.
Yeah. I always say you can never have too many bathrooms, and you can never have too many closets.
Okay, but so first of all, you're not. I don't know where. I mean, maybe a half bath for $10,000, depending. But if you're trying to put a full bathroom upstairs in where there was either a bedroom where there was no plumbing at,
Right.
you're going to spend easy. You're going to spend over $10,000 easy, right?
Yeah,
but you're
on four
not
and
getting
plumbing
that.
alone. That's what you say. You on 4 on plumbing alone.
Yeah, but you're not getting. But like we just talked about, you can't give. You're not giving them $10,000 back in an appraisal.
I would.
Oh, would you?
On a Royal Oak bungalow?
Oh no, I'm
Yeah,
talking.
absolutely.
I'm sorry. I'm talking about in a $200,000 Detroit neighborhood, 200 to
If they're
300,000.
spent, well,
And you
It
don't
goes
have
by
it.
that
I should
market of
say-
that
I should also
neighborhood
point out-
too,
Yeah,
and the
that's
price
what-
point.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
But
I
Price
feel like it
point.
still lost in certain areas in Detroit, because like even
Yeah.
like in Rosedale Park where we did one, if you put in extra bathrooms in them neighborhoods that didn't have those bathrooms, so you got what 2,000 to
Square feet,
2,500
yeah.
square foot, and you got one bathroom.
And the homes are like
And then
250
yeah.
to
But you didn't get
300.
your money back. So I'm talking about, and I'm talking about from
Well,
a flip standpoint as well. You're
Right.
not getting your money. You're
I've
going to
done
sell
full
it.
bathrooms for less than 10 grand, a lot less. I actually did one bathroom for less than 5,000.
Recently?
What year?
Yeah,
90,
it wasn't recent. It was.
90.
Oh,
it was-
okay.
it was-
Yeah.
it was-
He's a contractor.
It wasn't that far back. It was 2015.
Oh, that was the way. That was far back.
Yeah.
You don't. You are not
a-
getting
he's a
any
contractor,
bathroom then
so-
for me for
I should
for
also say I have friends in the
$5,000.
trades too.
Yeah,
so.
that's the difference.
You were
Yeah.
doing your own work. You said.
No,
Yeah.
she had friends.
Or
in
shop.
shop.
I had, but I
She
did do
knew
a
a
lot of the
bunch
work
of.
myself.
Yeah.
She knew a bunch of shops.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but I'm talking about from an investor standpoint. It's not happening. So you just explain why. So I had somebody today. They want me to put a half bath off of the kitchen, and they want me to put a full bathroom upstairs.
Yeah,
right?
but some things, even though I don't adjust for them, they contribute to the overall marketability and appeal, and will change the choice of comparables that we pull from when we're going to do the appraisal.
Got you.
So this
Right.
is where, and a lot of people see it just from the one angle. Well, am I going to get the exact dollar for dollar? Or are they going to make that size of an adjustment? Not necessarily. Here's the thing. You put those extra bathrooms in, then I'm choosing comparables that have those extra bathrooms in. And guess what? Those are probably selling for a lot more than the houses that don't have the plumbing. Plumbing sells. Closets sell. No such thing as too many of either. And if you have too many bathrooms because you don't want to clean them, you're more than likely can afford to pay somebody to clean those toilets. So I always say plumbing is one of the best areas to invest in your house.
Gotcha.
I can't wait till my closet get here.
Who doing your closet?
I'm just having another one. I had my master closet built out by I'm not gonna say their name because they ain't paying me for promotion, but they're gonna come back and do my main floor closet, that one in between the family room and the kitchen. It's just a large. It's already a large.
You got to knock down walls to do it?
It's a big.
okay.
We was talking about using it for a bedroom, but it's a nice space, and it just would be nice if it were a completely built out space, adding more storage. More ability to store things.
Yeah, you can't. It doesn't. Nobody ever complains that they have too much storage.
Yeah.
Or too many bathrooms.
Storage and organized.
Yep. But another feature that's coming popular that I did this just because out of sheer laziness in my farmhouse. I had a first floor laundry there. I had about 2,000 square feet on the main floor and a first floor laundry when I bought it. And then there was one big room upstairs with a half bath. And then a big area of unfinished attic. I gutted that bathroom, a half bath, and I made it a full bath. And then I made myself, finished off that attic space, added about 200 square feet of closet. So it was awesome. I was like, it was to die for closet. But I also put in a washing machine and dryer right in my closet, which the joke about it is right next to the washer and dryer, there was a big cabinet. And I'm like, even though the washer and dryer are still in my closet right here, next to the hangers, I still always had piles of clothes on that cabinet. Anyway, but you can't go wrong. That in the higher end price bracket, putting washer and dryer in the closet is going to be a big thing coming up.
So what I'm hearing a good idea is because like you get a lot of investors and they call us after they did the rehab, right? It sounds like, or even with your home sellers, before they make these major improvements, they need to talk to either a realtor or an appraiser, probably an appraiser first, to say how much value add with this ad or what type, will I get my money back, basically?
I do offer consultations and ARV appraisals as well.
Okay.
If somebody has just bought a house and they're like, well, what can I do to this property to get my biggest bang for my buck?
Right.
I do offer those services as well.
Okay.
So we just got our second warning.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, give her let them know where they can find you for those.
Oh, you can reach out to me directly. I work at KW Metro with Reggie. My office there, I do my appraisal work out of that office as well as my real estate sales. Right. You can call me at 586-481-6260. You can reach out to me via email at robertasocia.com. That's ROBERTASOCIA@gmail.com. Or you can reach out to me on Facebook.
All right.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap. Well,